Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a seriously fascinating journey that connects massive global economic shifts directly to your wallet. We're going to break down a pretty complex geopolitical situation and translate it into exactly what it means for your daily life, your savings, and ultimately, your future. We've put together an incredibly compelling journey for you today, trekking the macro all the way down to the micro. So, let's jump right in.
30. Just sit with that number for a second. I want you to imagine that a single closed-door meeting, literally lasting just a few hours, could sink an entire nation's economy for 30 whole years. Sounds crazy, right? Well, there's no exaggeration here. That is exactly what happened to Japan. And the really chilling question we're exploring today is, are we on the verge of it happening all over again?
All right, part one, the 1985 Plaza Accord tragedy. Okay, let's dive into this. To understand what might happen tomorrow, we absolutely have to rewind the clock 40 years and look at 1985. Back then, the U.S. economy under President Ronald Reagan was in a pretty precarious spot. The government had slashed taxes while massively increasing military spending. It was essentially like, keeping your salary exactly the same but deciding to just double your credit card spending overnight. Not great. At the exact same time, to crush inflation, the Federal Reserve under Paul Volcker hiked interest rates to an eye-watering 20%. This pulled a massive wave of global money into the U.S., making the dollar incredibly strong. Actually, it was so strong that American exports became way too expensive for anyone else to buy. Meanwhile, high-quality Japanese cars and electronics were absolutely dominating the U.S. market. The trade deficit was exploding, and tensions were so incredibly high that American auto workers were literally out there smashing Japanese cars with hammers. So 5 nations got together at the Plaza Hotel in New York. Think of it like a local shopping district where one store is just crushing it because of their great prices, and 5 rival store owners meet up in secret to force that successful store to raise its prices just to save their own businesses. And in this case, that successful store was Japan.
So these 5 nations agreed to coordinate a massive sell-off of the dollar to artificially weaken it. And for Japan, well, the results were instantaneous and completely devastating. Before this agreement, which became known as the Plaza Accord, $1 bought about 240 yen. Just 2 years later, a dollar bought only 120 yen. The value of the yen literally doubled. Imagine if you were a Japanese car maker selling a vehicle in America for $4,200. Suddenly, you had to charge over $8,000 just to break even. Japanese export pricing was absolutely crushed overnight.
Let's see how this snowballed into a historic catastrophe. Desperate to save its economy from a total export collapse, the Bank of Japan aggressively slashed interest rates all the way down to 2.5%. Money became practically free, and this ignited one of the most infamous financial bubbles in human history. People borrowed massively to buy up stocks and real estate. By 1989, the Nikkei stock index nearly tripled, hitting 39,000 points. People famously used to say that the real estate value of Tokyo alone could buy the entire United States. But, as we know, it was just an illusion. When the bubble inevitably collapsed in the 1990s, real estate plunged by 70 to 80%. This left regular citizens holding massive debts on practically worthless assets. And that right there kicked off the lost 30 years of deflation and stagnant wages in Japan, all triggered by one single hotel meeting.
Which brings us to Section 2, History is Repeating Itself.
We're talking about all of this today because, as we look at the global economic landscape in 2025, there is a seriously chilling sense of déjà vu. The setup we're seeing right now is almost a perfect mirror image of the conditions right before that 1985 Plaza Accord. Let's map this out, just looking purely at the facts. In the 1980s under Reagan, we had massive deficits from tax cuts and heavy spending, right alongside those sky-high interest rates. Today, under the current U.S. administration with President Trump, we are seeing the exact same structural desires. The U.S. wants to revitalize domestic manufacturing and shrink trade imbalances. And the primary tool being discussed and used right now is the threat of heavy tariffs against allies and competitors alike. But the underlying goal, it remains exactly the same as it was in 1985. The U.S. desperately wants a weaker dollar to make its own exports competitive again.
Just look at the sheer scale of the situation driving this. The current United States national debt has shattered the $36 trillion mark. That is a number so massive, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. This debt now exceeds 120% of America's entire gross domestic product. That means the U.S. officially owes significantly more money than the entire country even produces in a given year.
To put that crazy macro number into perspective, let's bring it down to the micro level for a second.
If you were to take that $36 trillion US debt and distribute it among Japan's 120 million citizens, it would equal out to about 30 million yen of debt for every single person. 30 million yen. It's just a staggering imbalance, and the deficit is growing by over $1 trillion every single year. The US simply cannot sustain this without making its currency cheaper to stimulate domestic growth.
And this brilliantly illustrates the urgency of the situation. Back in 1985, the U.S. trade deficit that triggered the Plaza Accord was around $122 billion. By 2024, that annual trade deficit had swollen to $1.2 trillion. The problem they're facing today is literally 10 times worse than the crisis levels of the 1980s. The pressure to adjust global currencies is at an absolute boiling point.
Moving on to Section 3, the quiet Second Accord.
So if the pressure is similar to what we saw in the 80s, what exactly is the modern solution brewing right now? Because make no mistake, the U.S. administration is actively looking for a way to balance the scales. And it involves something financial strategists are already giving a name to, the rumored Mar-a-Lago Accord. Now, this isn't just random internet speculation. It's a concept rooted in reports from U.S. economic strategists like Stephen Myron. The core idea is that the U.S. will use the very heavy threat of tariffs like a battering ram, forcing allied nations into an implicit currency devaluation agreement. Basically, the U.S. will hold off on punishing tariffs, provided other nations step back and allow the U.S. dollar to weaken against their own currencies.
Now, what's really interesting here is how Japan fits into this modern puzzle. Unlike 1985, where Japan was forced completely against its will to change its currency, today, Japan's own internal goals actually align perfectly with America's. After 30 years of frozen, zero, or even negative interest rates, the Bank of Japan has started raising rates, hiking them to 0.5% by January 2025. It's like a frozen river finally cracking and beginning to flow again. When Japan raises interest rates, it naturally makes the yen stronger, simply because holding yen yields more of a return. So Japan wants to raise rates to normalize its own economy, which strengthens the yen, which in turn weakens the dollar. It is exactly what the U.S. wants.
However, don't expect a dramatic black and white photo op at a fancy hotel this time around. The world is just way too complex now. I mean, China is a massive economic superpower that wasn't even at the table in '85. The European Central Bank operates entirely independently. And the global foreign exchange market, it now trades a mind-blowing $7.5 trillion every single day. That is a beast way too big for any small group of politicians to just easily tame. Because of this, experts believe we will not see a public Plaza Accord. Instead, what we're looking at is a quiet accord. Nations will implicitly accept dollar depreciation and a stronger yen without ever actually signing a formal public treaty.
Let's hit Section 4, Impact on Your Daily Life.
So all these trillions of dollars, these central bank policies, and implicit international agreements, what do they actually mean for you? Let's zoom all the way into the micro level and look at how this quiet currency shift is going to directly impact your wallet. A stronger yen, driven by this quiet accord, is definitely a double-edged sword. On the plus side, genuine relief at the supermarket. Japan imports 60% of its food and 90% of its energy. Think back to 2022, when the yen hit 150 to the dollar, and the price of cooking oil, bread, and gasoline just absolutely skyrocketed. Well, a stronger yen reverses that. Your everyday cost of living drops, and hey, traveling abroad becomes significantly cheaper too. But on the flip side, there are massive risks to your investments. Export giants like Toyota get hit really hard when the yen strengthens. Just look at July 2024. The mere hint of a Bank of Japan rate hike caused the Nikkei to plummet an agonizing 4,400 points in a single day. Plus, any investments you hold in US dollars, those will lose value when converted back to yen.
So, the absolutely crucial point is this. While cheaper groceries are definitely nice, the most direct, immediate risk for the average citizen actually lies right in their home. In Japan, approximately 70% of homeowners have variable rate mortgages. That means if the Bank of Japan continues to raise interest rates to strengthen the yen and align with this global shift, those monthly mortgage payments are going to automatically increase.
Let me show you exactly what that looks like in real life. If you have a 30 million yen mortgage on a 35-year loan and the Bank of Japan raises rates by just 1%, that tiny 1% increase adds a massive 6.3 million yen in total lifetime interest to your debt. Guys, that is the price of a brand new car, completely wiped out by a single percentage point shift in macroeconomic policy. This isn't just some high-level theory. This is about to hit millions of household budgets directly.
Finally, Section 5, How to Protect Your Assets.
Okay, here's the good news. Unlike the citizens of 1985 who were completely blindsided by this, we can see this coming.
We can take all this macroeconomic analysis and turn it into real, actionable personal defense strategies. Let's look at exactly what you need to do to protect your hard-earned assets. Here is your 4-step survival guide for the coming shift. Number 1. If you're on a variable rate mortgage, you should strongly consider switching to a fixed rate right now, before rates climb any further. Sure, it might cost a little bit more today, but it is the ultimate umbrella before the storm hits. Number 2, review your investment portfolio. You want to shift away from a heavy reliance on export giants and move towards domestic demand companies, the ones that actually benefit from cheaper import costs. Number 3, if you hold U.S. assets, look into foreign exchange hedging so that a falling dollar doesn't just wipe out your stock gains. And number 4, hold cash. When these macro shifts cause temporary market panics, like that crazy 4,400-point drop, having cash on hand allows you to swoop in and buy incredible assets at a massive discount.
The quiet Second Accord is already in motion. The world's economic tectonic plates are officially shifting. But remember, the defining difference between today and the tragic events of 1985 is knowledge. We know the history, we can clearly see the parallels, and most importantly, we have the tools to prepare ourselves. The massive currents of global finance are moving, so the only question left is, are you ready for the next shift? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I highly encourage you to review these points, take a close look at your own finances, and get prepared for what's coming next. Catch you next time.